Hello everybody, my name is Bookie and I'm here for the Good Eve channel. And today I'm continuing my series on passive income. So today I want to touch on the question, does passive income work? So what I'm discussing in this video today is whether passive income actually works as a legitimate source of income. So what you'll get out of this video, why should you watch it? Well, if you've always thought about, wouldn't it be so lovely to have money rolling into my bank account while I do nothing or sleep, then this is a video that you definitely want to watch, because it's going to explore what exactly is passive income and, do passive income investments actually work? So the first thing I'm going to do is start off again by defining passive income. So passive income, I would say, if you're thinking about a catchy way to think about it, is money that you make without continually trading your time and your effort to make money. So many of us have jobs, or we're self-employed professionals, or we're even business owners. And if you're in any of these situations, you know that you have to clock into your 9 to 5 or 8 to 6, or that you have to put in effort. You have to work the business. I mean, many business owners work 90 hours a week. You heard me, 90 hours a week. You have to respond to calls, you have to be on top of it. You're constantly actively engaged with your hands on the reins to make sure that your business is moving forward. Passive income is very different from this. In the case of passive income, you basically come to a situation where you're not constantly checking, you're not constantly thinking about it. Once, for instance, if it's a bond, for instance, which I talked about in my previous video, if the coupon is due on the 25th of March, all you have to do on the 25th of March is check your bank account, and there you will see it. The glorious money has hit your account. So that's how passive income works. So can it work? And that's what I want to explore. Now, at the beginning of selecting or investing in a passive income investment, you have to do a lot of work. Sorry guys, for those of you who've heard that all you have to do is just hand over your money and there it is, you'll get a money return back. I'm sorry to tell you, that is not how true passive income works. You have to do some work. And I'm going to talk about 7 tips that you should think about that will help you ensure that you can make sure that passive income works for you. So the first tip I want to talk about is you need to do your homework, research, before you go into an asset class, which is the type of asset, whether it be bonds or stocks or shares, or whether it be real estate or rental properties or a slew of other things. You need to do your research. You need to study. Warren Buffett says something, and I always remember it when I'm trying to make a decision when it's time for me to invest. He only invests in things that he understands. So if you don't understand it, it doesn't mean you can't invest in it. After all, unlike Warren, I'm not 91 years old, but you can educate yourself. You can talk to people who know something about that field. You can read the economic trends that will give you an idea of what's the likelihood of this particular industry or this particular asset continuing to do well. What are the legislation, the laws that are coming on the horizon and being passed that will impact this particular investment? So there's so many things you need to do. You need to really spend, I would suggest, if it's an investment you're not familiar with, at least 10 to 20 hours reading, studying, researching, and your research sources really matter. Where you go to get your information really matters. God bless church groups, God bless mosque groups and Buddhist groups and all those religious groups. They're wonderful, but they're not necessarily good places to get investment advice. Your friendly mother and church mother or mosque mother or religious auntie is wonderful. She's great for giving you cookies. She's great for giving you warm hugs. Unless she's a financial advisor, certified financial advisor, and works in that industry, she might not be the right person for you to go to get financial advice. So you can often hear about certain things in those settings. Now, when it's time for you to do your research, you need to go to legitimate research sources to find out, is this a really good investment for me to consider? So really do your homework. The second thing I would say is, when you have a passive investment, you're going to need to monitor it. And by monitoring it, depending on the investment or the asset class, you need to know what's going on. So I'm going to give you an example. There's some people that do government bonds, right? And they'll do sovereign government bonds for other countries. So there was a time that people were doing quite a few bonds from the country Venezuela. But recently, in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, for many years, there have been growing restrictions and economic sanctions against the country of Venezuela. What does that mean for your sovereign bond? Well, if the whole world are passing restrictions against a country, it's very possible that that country fundamentally may become, for bond payment purposes, insolvent, which is pretty much what happened in the case of Venezuela. They couldn't get access to US dollars to repay their bonds that were pegged in US dollars. And so the face value of their bond, if it was $100,000, the actual value was trading at a discount of $90,000. So a $100,000 face value bond was only worth $10,000 if you wanted to sell it. So you do have to monitor your investments. Monitor what's going on in the industry or in the country or in that segment, things that you can see, trends on the horizon that are likely to impact the liquidity or the sustainability of that investment, and you can jump out right before things get really, or long before things get really bad. Sometimes people stick in there for a few years and they still get paid, and then eventually what you could see coming on the horizon, if it's not addressed from a legal or a law standpoint or from an economic standpoint, that you'll be so glad that you took the decision to protect your funds. Point 3 would be, please select a good, reputable, and honest investment manager. And why I say this is, take the example of a rental property. If you have a rental property and it's in a prime location and you actually have a good tenant in there, it's a corporate tenant that has a good reputation, and then you hand it over to a property manager so that you can really just enjoy the whole passive experience, but that property manager is dishonest, convinces your corporate tenant to pay their rent into their accounts, doesn't remit that rent to you, doesn't keep up the building even though they have the authority and the funds to do it, begins to do, maybe frustrates that tenant out, all of a sudden, that asset that you should have just been able to go to sleep on is not generating any income or very little income for you. And all of that is down to when you have or you use an either incompetent or dishonest or a less than reputable asset manager. So even if it's a property manager, and the same goes with shares. There are lots of horror stories of people who've bought shares. They bought Tesla, they bought Microsoft, but they handed it over, they bought it through a brokerage firm that wasn't reputable. And that brokerage firm just closed their books one day and walked away. So it's important that you ask questions. For instance, if you're buying shares, you need to ask your broker questions. Will these shares be held directly in my name, or will they be held as a nominee through the company's name? There's so many little tips and tricks that dishonest and disreputable companies, or so reputable companies, and some of these companies are well known, but they have, certain products that at the end of the day, they don't give you the real value for what you're looking for. So these are some of the questions you really need to research and talk to people who've been in the industry. The fourth thing I would say, it's important that you have realistic expectations of passive income. A lot of people get trapped and tricked because they have this belief that passive income is, I give you $100 today, and then by next month, every month you pay me $50. And when you see unrealistic expectations around returns on your investment, be assured your core investment will not be returned to you. So there are two things you need to think about when you're picking a passive investment. One definitely is the return on investment, but another part is the return of your investment. You want to get your capital back. And so in order to ensure that you get your capital back, you need to make sure that you have realistic expectations. So for instance, what is a realistic expectation? Well, that depends on the asset. So for stocks and shares, for instance, depending on the market, whether it's the US or for instance, Nigerian stock market, will guide you in terms of what to expect in terms of return. When it comes to bonds, for instance, similarly, that will guide you depending on which sovereign country it is, that will also guide you in terms of return. And then when it comes to rental properties, you can usually expect a bit of a higher return, but that also depends on the market and your entry price into that property. So that will also guide you. So if you have an idea of, let's take property for instance, and right now you buy into a fresh property, a return of 5% after expenses is pretty good, almost ambitious in this current real estate market. So if someone's promising you that you can make 25% or even 10% after all expenses and taxes are paid, you should ask a lot more questions. And even if you ask a lot more questions and you do a bit more research, for me, I'm more focused on saying, look, because I want to make $10 on my $100 investment versus $5 on my $100 investment, if I'm sure the $5 one is more secure, I'll take that over the $10. I'm getting double the return, yes, but I could lose my capital, which is 10 times this interest that I'm being promised. So those are some of the things. If you don't have realistic expectations around your investments, you'll often find that you will become vulnerable to being taken advantage of by Shylocks, tricksters, and scammers. Number five, diversify. So when you're thinking about passive income, try to look at having 1, 2, 3, 4 multiple buckets, because the thing about passive income is, yes, you do some initial work to research, to understand, to get a good property manager, but sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, there are things that happen in the economy that are beyond your control, and sometimes it takes a while for them to happen. Sometimes they happen all of a sudden and you really don't have enough advance notice, and so that income dwindles or it disappears and your investment there is lost or it gets stuck for a long time. But if you have diversification, what that does for you is you have multiple buckets of passive income, and so those other buckets will continue to give you returns. So it's really important that you remember number 5, to diversify your passive income streams. Number 6, you need to bring in enough initial capital to commit to passive income. So because passive income typically, and disappointingly, people don't want to hear this, most passive income buckets, you'll make about 5 to 10%. 10% is really ambitious year on year for passive income. And this is for something in which you're not doing much. A lot of it will be even 2%, 3%. Now, the thing about this is, so if you're only putting in $100, then you're making $3 for a whole year, or $5 or $10, and that can seem incredibly discouraging. And so you need to earn enough from your current job or your business or your being, if you're a self-employed professional, from your professional services, to start and continue to grow your capital outlay. That's really, really, really important. So even if you start with $100, because it's important that you get started, this brings you to the next point and the final point, which is you need to be consistent. And being consistent means even if you start with that small amount, you need to continue to build on it, continue to invest. How much you put in for the initial outlay, or you put in as your capital into a passive income investment, will determine how much you get out ultimately. So this is a figure that's thrown about by the people who are part of the popular, well, growing in popularity, FIRE movement. And so they would say for you to retire early, if you want to earn, for instance, $50,000 a year, that's what your expense and your cost basis is. you need to have saved and invested at least 25 times that amount, which in essence, if you flip it backwards, means for every $100,000 you put away, you can expect a 4% on average return. And that 4% on average return is what you can depend on. So if you put away $100,000, is $4,000 enough for you to live on? If your answer is no, you keep upping it until you have enough to cover how much you need to live. And if you live in a place where your cost basis is very low, then maybe $500,000 will be enough. Maybe $1 million will be enough. Maybe you'll need more than that. But it just gives you an idea of the kind of things you need to think about when it comes to passive income. So does passive income work? Definitely. There's certainly lots of legitimate sources of passive income out there. But I think what happens and where people get in trouble is their expectations. If you expect that, I'll put in $50,000 today and I'll start earning $10,000 a month, you are going to lose your $50,000 9.9 times out of 10. There may be the 1% chance that you don't. I'm not aware of those investments, but the majority of them, you will be disappointed. So if you are thinking about passive income, it's something that supplements your day-to-day. You have a job, you have a business, you're self-employed professional, and you want to also have that extra, and you're trying to build that extra bit of room, that extra bit of space, then that's where you want to start working on building your passive income streams. So that's it for me today. My conclusion is passive income does work, but have realistic expectations. Please remember to subscribe, to like, to share this video. Bye for now.